So tell us, who is Yousef? He's a misplaced CIO. Who is this guy? Does he know what he's doing?
I'm still discovering that. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that piece out.
One thing you're very well known for is you understand the business case very well. What is that secret sauce which makes you successful?
The best CIOs, in my viewpoint, are the ones who understand the customer of the company they're operating in.
Tell me what you mean. Let's go deeper in this.
Okay. So for example,
you've been running this community called the CIO Group Therapy dinner.
Well,
CIOs are the busiest people on the planet. And
Yeah.
you get them together. How do you do that?
well, actually, part of it is just started as a bit of a joke.
So tell me why it's valuable.
The reason the dinner is valuable is because
This report from Harvard Business Review that 95% of the generative AI pilots are failing inside companies. So enterprises are very wary of adopting these solutions.
I think part of the reason that these AI projects fail is data quality, change management, infrastructure, cost, and I think a big part of the reason is because
What is your advice to the founder of 2025-26?
my first advice is
Welcome to another fantastic episode of Control Alt podcast. I bring unique people who are changing the landscape of technology in Silicon Valley and across the globe. Today our guest is so unique. I'm more than excited to share why he is unique. He is one of those chosen CIOs who goes ahead and becomes an investor, a person who knows what it takes to buy technology inside a large company. He's been CIO 5 times and now he's an investor coaching founders how to build technology that will sell in large enterprise organizations. Without further ado, let's bring on Yousuf Khan, who's currently venture partner at Ridge Ventures and is all set to start his new journey as a founder of a hotshot AI startup. Yousuf, welcome to Control Alt podcast.
thank you for having me. Much appreciated.
For me, it's a dream. I've been a
appreciate
long-term follower of your
I appreciate
social feed
Thank you.
and a huge fan of your humor.
Thank you very much.
So tell us, who is Yousef? He's a misplaced CIO. Who is this guy? Does he know what he's doing?
Yeah, I'm still discovering that. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that piece out. Yeah. So thank you for the very kind introduction. Appreciate that. I've been a CIO of 5 companies in the past. I've built a career in technology, starting literally at IT support and being the kind of administrator for the CTO of a company. That was my first start when I started working for a technology startup in London. And then over the years, I started becoming very close with a lot of founders of companies. I was helping them either as an early customer. In some cases, I became an advisor. And then in the last chapter, over the course of the last 5 years, I was a partner at a wonderful VC firm called Ridge Ventures, where I was investing in companies. And then I made the crazy decision to start building a company. And so this will be a new chapter, and I'm super excited about it. So yeah, thanks for having me.
So Yousef, your profile, look at that. I mean, you were CIO at Pure Storage. You were CIO and you led customer success at Moveworks, the hardest acquisitions of 2025. And before that, you worked with companies like Qualys. You were the CIO of Qualys, and the first CIO at Automation Anywhere. You were the first CIO at multiple companies.
Yes.
And one thing which I found very unique is you are a business major. You studied at London.
King's College London, that's right. Yeah.
King's College London. And what made you move from a business major to your first stint as a CIO of Hult School, where they were operating in 5 different locations?
Yeah.
So here's a business guy who's running IT operations, deeply technical, boring tech stuff.
Yeah.
You're cleaning up the infrastructure.
Yeah.
So how did that happen? Tell us all about the misplaced CIO.
I needed a job, so that was really come down to basically. I was at university at King's, great school, had a great experience at King's College London, and it was at the height of the internet boom in '99. And I got a call from a temp agency, and they said, well, this company is moving offices and they just need somebody to help move stuff. And that was basically it. And so I showed up at the offices of QXL.com at the time. It's now called QXL Ricardo. And I showed up, and it was London. It was in the summer. and I needed a job, and that was pretty much it. And so I walked in, and they were like, okay, we just need you to move stuff around. I was like, what is this place? Like, what's going on here? And during that day, I saw a number of key things that stood out. One is a lot of people were very happy, and I thought, wow, people are coming to work and super happy. I would like to figure out what's going on here. What struck me was really a lot of interesting technology was being built. There was an online auction company at the time, was a competitor to eBay in Europe. And the other thing that came about was the company was only a few people up until 6 months ago. And that was like, I was just like, wait a second, sorry, where did all these people show up? They said, oh, we got venture capital funding. And I was like, what is venture capital funding? And that, I was just like fascinated. I was like, so two people had an idea, or some guy had an idea to build this company, had an idea, he built a product. It was exciting, it grew because of the internet and technology. Now that's what's happening with AI, of course, as well. And they were invested, and somebody decided this was going to be an amazing big company. And all of a sudden, all these people had jobs, and they were building, and they were setting up offices all over the world. I was like, how did this come about? This is amazing. And so that was my kind of interest of understanding what venture capital was and technology. And then the other piece was I happened to basically extend that job from a day of moving stuff to helping out the CTO. So there's a lot of luck involved. And I ended up being good at a few things. One was managing a bunch of technology projects. And at the time, the project, which was the top priority, was Y2K. And my initials are YK. And so the first project I was given was Y2K. And my initials were YK, and so everyone started calling me Y2K because they thought, well, look, basically, if it fails, right? It's some guy who we were like, okay, we can fire him. It's very easy to fire him, basically, right?
Yeah.
Turned out everything worked out okay. That was my first involvement in managing technology projects, and I was hooked. And then I just every time, I'm a big movie guy, and so every time I tried to get out, they pulled me back in, as Al Pacino said in Godfather 3. Not the greatest movie in the world, but I will say that I just got enamored with technology and got more technology jobs. All of my friends went into work in banking and finance. And so I just thought, okay, I'll just do this technology thing, and then I'll go into banking and finance, like all of my other friends. And that's where I was, because I was a business management undergrad. And it just turned out that when I did get called from banks, it was to work in the IT department. And I was like, well, I'd rather not work in the IT department of a bank. I'd rather work for a technology company. And so that created my track in working in technology. And the next thing I knew, so I call myself the accidental CIO because it was never my goal, but I ended up basically becoming a CIO of Hull International Business School, and then Qualys, and then Pure Storage, and Moveworks, and then Automation Anywhere. So, yeah,
amazing.
That's been a journey.
So Yousef, you're one thing you're very well known for is you understand the business case very well. You were brought in to Pure Storage as a CIO 6 months before they turned public.
Yep.
So there was a reason why they got a business major, because it was a need of the hour.
Yeah.
What is it that is different about the way you do the CIO role, or you look at the CIO org? What is that secret sauce which makes you successful?
I honestly, I don't think it's that. I don't think it's that complicated. I'm not trying to be modest or anything. I just think that I think the best CIOs, in my viewpoint, are the ones who understand the customer of the company they're operating in. They understand the customer experience super well. I think the second is that they need to just understand how the business operates from every level, and I think that's important.
Tell me what you mean. Let's go deeper in this.
Okay. So for example, every company I've worked for, I knew the product inside out. I knew what the customers like. When I was in education, I was on campuses looking at what students and faculty were doing and the systems that go into that. And once you understand the customer experience, you're able to build the systems that can, create a better customer experience. So that's one aspect of it. And then the systems are not just CX systems, they're actually internal operating systems, right? Yeah. They're like, okay, how do we make sure that somebody in the marketing department, the sales team, in procurement engineering, the work, the tools, the technology that they have, that the CIO is providing, is impacting revenue, it's impacting customer experience, helping in operating efficiency.
So it's like a kitchen,
Yeah.
and you're serving the customer.
Right.
But what happens inside the kitchen?
Totally.
And
like
are the chefs working
yes,
together?
and most importantly, make sure it's a clean kitchen. That's super important to be able to do.
The data part.
Not just data infrastructure, like keep it in order basically. So for me, it was really about understanding the customer experience. Now, having been a CIO when I was at Pure Storage, I knew about storage. I had been a customer of storage systems that Pure Storage competed with. So I believed in the solution, number one. I always stand by the company that I've worked for because I really believe in the product offering. And that has been true even when I became an investor. When I invested in companies, I believed in the product, I believed in the founder building that product, and I believed in the market opportunity because I would buy that product and then some. So one is being able to understand the customer experience. The second is being taken an interest in people, right? And I think that's super important. And that basically means having a business background allowed me to really understand how each of these functions operated, what they needed, what they were complaining about, which they complain about a lot, and how I looked to basically solve those. And so I think that lens is kind of important for a CIO to think about when they want to be able to deploy technology, when they want to be able to build solutions. And now, more importantly, in the age of AI, how you're able to deploy AI at scale and how to be able to run AI transformations. And I think it's very difficult to do if you don't have a level of depth of understanding how a company operates at multiple layers. And for me, I was kind of this individual in a company, whether it was CIO at Qualys or Pure Storage or others, who I would be able to connect with every single head of department, but I'd also be able to connect with the team members in those particular teams and be able to understand what their working life was like and some of the systems that we're using. And I translated that into saying, well, they're not super happy and this system really sucked and they need help here. And that was a big part of my strategy.
That's a very unique experience you have. You've overseen the integration of softwares like Salesforce, Okta, Zoom again. So you've been
all at early stages. Yeah, I mean,
at
2015. Before a lot of these companies they weren't that big at that time.
Yeah.
Zoom, for example, in 2015, we rolled that out. Moveworks was one of the first customer. There's numerous companies where I was like literally testing out the product. And being able to give feedback on it or others. And then of course, as part of the CIO role, the existing vendors like Salesforce and Oracle and others also were expanding. Either they were acquiring companies. So Salesforce, for example, acquired a company in the CPQ, in the configure price quote space with SteelBrick. I was early with them to be able to understand that. To deploy those systems out, to integrate and build a good architecture, that's the core role of the CIO. Yeah.
So one of the roles of a CIO is if you like a product, you have to go pitch internally to other departments.
Yes.
Because the CIO is a very high-end systems thinker.
Build a business case and make the sell. Yes, correct.
Yeah. What kind of communication skills do you use to convince someone?
Yes.
Let's say you like a product. Let's say you liked a product like Moveworks.
Totally.
And you want to convince a CFO.
Yeah.
Or you want to convince a legal. How does that work? What does Yousef do?
Typically blackmail. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm kidding.
What's this whole ROI game?
No,
it stumps
ROI game.
me.
Exactly. Yeah. No. I think I will say the sense of humor is very important for the CIO role because it's actually underappreciated how much stress is undertaken in that role because you are overseeing systems for the entire company, and you'll typically get blamed for stuff even when it's definitely not your fault.
So I get the source of humor now.
So that's important basically.
Okay.
You just need to keep a light sense of humor with it. But look, I think a big part of the role is being able to effectively communicate change. Number one. Number two, it's also being able to sell and to be able to sell a vision. And then the third is being able to talk about a plan and how you're able to execute towards it, right? And so I was lucky that I worked with amazing people, on the executive side, for example, at Pure Storage as CFO, Tim Ritters, for example, or Joe Fitzgerald, who was the chief legal officer, or David Hatfield, who was the CRO and president of the company. These are forward-looking individuals, people I worked and connected with really well. On the CHRO side, for example, Joanna Jackman, who's been a phenomenal head of people across multiple companies. It was important to build good executive partnerships, and that was the other thing that most people miss. So, for example, Pure Storage, there was a large channel business. Michael Sotnick led channels and alliances. Kevin Delane was a major sales leader of that company. Being able to work with those individuals required you to be able to build partnerships, understand what they needed, understand what their organizations needed. At Qualys, the now CEO Sumed Takar was president at the time and chief product officer. I built a very good relationship with him. I had to actually understand kind of what the engineering and the product organization needed.
Yeah.
So I think being able to take interest in understanding is important, and then being real about what the company needs. I think a lot of people miss this. They're like, well, I'm just going to go do this. Like, what are you trying to achieve? What does success look like? How are you going to make that happen? All of those things come as part of the sell. And I think communication skills is something that I'd like to say I built up over time that I think is important for a CIO to be successful at.
No, it's incredible, the complexity of your character, the shades I'm uncovering. So, let's talk about Moveworks.
Sure.
They just closed the acquisition service now.
Yeah.
You were CIO and you headed customer success.
Yes, indeed.
Tell us about how you sold Moveworks internally when you you not sell Moveworks.
Yeah, I did.
You were an end user and then you joined the company.
Yeah, totally.
How did that work?
Yeah. So
and how did you wear a different hat when you joined the company in a leadership role?
I mean, look,
let's go both sides.
It was a phenomenal product when it was being built. So you have sort of great founders and early founding team, right? Bhavin Shah was a repeat founder. Vaibhav this was his second company. It came from a background in data and engineering. Varun Singh was on the product side. Jung Chen came on machine learning. They had each built up collective amazing teams around them, number one. They had thought about the product from a lens of understanding the customer need at a level of depth. And then the other thing is they understood where the market was going. And that's where I really connected well with them as their first customer. And I love the product. I just thought, wow, every CIO should be using this. I believe in it. I rolled this out at Pure Storage. A number of other amazing technology leaders. Amit Bhatnagar was leading IT at Nutanix, so he had led that and deployed that out. And then I joined the company early on in a small office to lead customer success. And the reason I made that change was I stood by the product. I knew that this is where automation and machine learning and definitively AI as a collective strategy as part of the CIO's portfolio, this was a great fit for that. So if you are a CIO and you are looking to transform operations, you start with your own house and you say, look, I'm using AI to be able to bring efficiency into my operation, and Moveworks is a great product to do that. It dealt with core IT support operational issues, and then other leaders in the organization were inspired to say, I want that. So HR would show up and finance would show up. I mean, I remember in one case, we were looking to, as part of the sales cycle for a lot of the initial customers, because I was a CIO and I knew a lot of the CIOs, and they were like, what's this former CIO of Pure Storage doing at this little company, right? Like literally at that time, right? And I said, well, I'm here because I believe in the product. We deployed it out at Pure Storage. It was fantastic. And we sometimes had the finance department who were looking at the deal, and they were like, wait a second, we want this before the IT team want it. Wow. Right? And that's when you know
it's like a PLG
literally, they were like, you were kind of doing it from that standpoint. So for me, it was learning about building a company. Number two, it was building a company, learning from the founders and how they look to do everything from capital raises to how to think about the operational issues. My value add, for what it's worth, was really being able to put more enterprise DNA and put that in place from a security lens. So when we went to pitch to high enterprise companies, really companies with a very high threshold for security, we passed that test every single time. And why was that? Is because we came with the enterprise. So Kyle Hirai, who led IT at that time and worked with me very closely, we were just like, look, we were both IT buyers. And so we said, if this company came to us, what would we ask them? And what would our prospective customers ask them? Yeah. And so with those conversations, we just ran the competition out of town. Yeah. Right? And the reason for that is we just understood the buyer mindset better than anybody else did. And we're able to position, deal with objections, and it stood, and the product stood the test from that standpoint. Now it's being used by enterprises, and why clearly ServiceNow thought it was an amazing company to be part of. And so well done to the founders, and it was again a great story in being able to build a company in the enterprise space, focus in a very, very core goal, expand the platform, use amazing technology, and adopt the technology that evolves. And remember, when Moveworks was founded, I think it was 2017, it was pre-chat GPT. We were talking about transformer and BERT models when they were first coming out. We're like, wow, that's the next thing. And then, then this thing came into place with LLMs, etc. So Moveworks was far ahead, and had proven that on the technology side and then on the customer focus side. And I think that did really well.
Yeah. So tell me, what was it like building the security layer?
Yeah.
Seems to be becoming harder by the day because the attack surface is increasing.
Totally.
So, and you've had the experience of joining in as a CEO when the company is just hitting the growth phase multiple times.
Yeah.
So what was it like joining as CIO of Moveworks?
Well, so because I've been intellectually curious, I worked for a cybersecurity company in Qualys. So I understood cybersecurity at a level of depth, and I worked as a CIO in higher education at Hult. I looked at security from a very foundational lens. I was like, we just need to be able to protect this data, protect our students, protect our employees. So you start from that standpoint. A lot of CIOs don't care about it, which or are not intellectually interested.
Because they think CISO has to do it.
Well, they're just trying to avoid risk. It's again, I mean, the CIO role is stressful enough. They're like, I got to basically deal with hackers from some state nation. Like I don't want to deal with that. I've got enough on my plate, basically. So I don't know why. Maybe I'm just overly curious, but I thought it was kind of required to do that. So I came from a security lens and applied that to when I was at Pure Storage, I was also holding the kind of CISO title until we hired a full-time CISO, and I wanted to build a foundation for that. In fact, one of my first hires was a director of security.
So you built a solid model ground up.
Yeah. And so when I joined Moveworks, we always looked at it from that lens, and that's when, even when I became an investor and I was a board member of companies, I was able to advise a number of founders about how they go about positioning themselves, because I asked the same question. I was like, okay, how does this product, what is the risk attached to it?
Yeah.
Right? And what is the risk attached to it if it was taking data from my organization? And then the question comes down to, what data is it actually taking? And then the other question really comes down to is, what is this company actually doing? And so I put myself in the buyer's shoes. And so I always talk about that is, if you are a startup founder, if you are a venture investor, even when you are a CIO, think of it from a customer lens and think about the concerns. So when it comes to security, that was very much at the heart of it. Like, okay, how do we do that? And then we we were SOC 2 Type 2 compliant super fast. I think Kyle then led the ISO certification. I mean, it was ridiculous. Like, we were at a level that a lot of big companies that we went to pitch to, they were like, we haven't seen this at a company at your stage, that you are that mature and that set up, and the fact that we had a very clear plan. So I think that was important for us to do. And so it was important to do that, because you have to build trust with customers. And you come from that lens, and I think I provided that perspective. So, yeah.
Amazing. So Yousef, your community building with the CIOs is amazing. You started Catalyst at Pure Storage, and then you've been running this community called this CIO Group Therapy lunch.
Yes, I started what's called a CIO Group Therapy dinner. Yeah.
Dinner, okay.
Yeah.
CIO Group Therapy dinner.
Yeah.
And
there's more talk about at dinner than said lunch. Lunch you've got to run off, basically. So so dinner works, basically.
No, tell me about it. I'm very excited to learn about how you went about building this community. Well, CIOs are the busiest people on the planet, and you get them together. How do you do that?
Well, actually, part of it is just started as a bit of a joke, as most things in my life have unfortunately started off. I mean, to be honest with you, like, I just literally just started from that lens, where I was a CIO at Pure Storage. I was having a number of issues with a number of system vendors, and I was getting frustrated beyond belief. And I thought, well, I can't be the only person. Is it just me? Maybe I just am not that smart. Maybe this, because everybody else seems to be very happy, right? And so the problem was, you go to these CIO events, which there are a dozen, right, out there, and everybody would be just presenting about how amazing they are. And I thought, somebody who's got low self-esteem and like freaking out. I'm like, this is the worst place for me to be. Like, that guy's got it together. Like, she's doing really well.
So what's wrong with Gartner events? Like, I mean, they're amazing, aren't they?
There's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with them per se, but I think the real depth of a conversation has to happen over dinner, and I think it has to be in a smaller group. So what happened is, I went to these events, and basically these people would like present, And I'd go up to them and be like, hey, listen, I'm Yousuf Khan, I'm CIO. I was wondering, I've got this problem with this system, and they'll be like, oh yeah, we're suffering from that as well. I'm like, what? Like, you were just up there saying how you're crushing it, and now you're basically, and so I wasn't able to get any real information. So initially what happened was I just set up a dinner with a friend of mine, Declan Morris, who was CIO of Splunk at the time. And he said, let's just meet for dinner and we'll have the conversation. And I showed up at this dinner. So I reserved a table for 2 people, okay? And 10 people showed up.
Ooh.
Okay, the other CIOs showed up, but I'd never known. Some of them I heard about. I was like, "What are you doing here?" They're like, "Oh, we thought you guys were going to talk about this thing, so we thought we'd join." And so it was 10 of us, and so I basically started having this dinner. Initially, it was done to basically make nicknames for some of the vendors. I'm not joking. We just basically were just
so
like,
tired
we're just like call this one, etc. And I won't call. I'm not going to name them because I want to work with them eventually. But yeah, a lot of them were just complaining like, can you believe this? It was really just being able to exchange and air our kind of views. But I moderated the dinner in a way that helped me and helped others get a whole bunch of information out. And so then I did another dinner. And then I did another dinner, and I was the chief dinner organizer. So of course I'm like the organizer in chief. So everyone's like, Yousef, just here's the date, just go. And I booked the dinner and all the other stuff, and we all paid individually, or I would basically pay, etc. And it would be fine, totally. And then I got a call from a VC a few months later, and they said, we heard about this dinner. You don't know me, I'm an investor in Pure Storage. And I was wondering if I could sponsor one of your dinners. And I was like, sponsoring one of my dinners? Well, this is just a bunch of us complaining about a bunch of stuff. Like, why would you want to sponsor that? They said, well, we heard it was super valuable and we'd like to get some insights. And so out of obligation
tell me why it's valuable. Look, when we host such events with organizations I partner with, we have a structure, we allow people to talk, we ask
and that's
certain
your
questions.
Problem. That's your problem. You have structure. I'm just kidding. I'm just teasing.
Look, if you spoke all about these amazing things for an hour, then where do you document them? How do you know what was spoken?
So the good news is I don't drink. So that helps a lot, basically, right? So I have too many Diet Cokes for me. After the third one, I'm all wired up, basically. I'm not going to sleep until 2 a.m. So I'm basically put down a ton of notes. But in all seriousness, what happened is one dinner led to another dinner, and then basically next thing I know, I was organizing 2 dinners a month. And sometimes the VC would want to sponsor it, and sometimes the founder would want to sponsor it. And the reason that was valuable is because the format of the dinner worked. So for example, the dinner is organized myself. There's no registration required. There's just a calendar invite that basically gets sent out. I've been doing this for 10 years now. Literally hundreds of CIOs, literally all over the US, and then some in Europe and also in the Middle East. I literally extended it to that extent. Every time I showed up in a city for Pure Storage or somebody, I'd know a bunch of CIOs, I'd send out the invite and 10 people would show up. They'd be like, hey, what's going on? I was like, I'll tell you what's going on. This is what's going on. They're like, I can't believe this. So part of it is the format of the dinner. Second is you've got to be true to building a community, be authentic about it, right? And that was sort of
key. It's a lot of work, it's underestimated.
It is underestimated.
You need someone dedicated.
Yeah, totally.
Like the chief community officer.
Totally,
or
and there's like some working exercise that goes in to be able to do it. So that sort of stuff becomes problematic. And so I just, I'm an efficiency geek. So I was like, okay, how do I make this super efficient, right? And so I basically have been doing 2 dinners, sometimes 3 dinners a month for the last 10 years. When I became an investor at Ridge, we started taking it. Now we were sponsoring the dinner, so it was us. We extended that to CXOs, so that was a large community that was basically built. And the reason the dinner is valuable is because typically whoever used to sponsor it, they would be able to get very real feedback and get their questions answered.
Share some of those stories.
Right.
There are some common people in this dinners. You talked about Dheeraj and Mohit.
Sure.
My favorite role models here in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
Tell us some stories that came out of this community building exercise.
So part of it, I don't know why, but for some reason or other, people just started hearing more about these dinners. Some CIOs were like, I just went to this dinner. And the learnings you get from it and the community that you're able to build, I think that was super valuable for a lot of folks. And so they had mentioned it to founders that they had met or CEOs, and CEOs would be like, what is this? And look, the name itself, CIO Group Therapy dinner, right? Like you're like, what is this thing, right? And then you find out that it's actually just a group of people.
CIOs need therapy.
And moderation of the dinner is very important. So I moderate all the dinners. It's not something that I outsource or give it to somebody else to do. It's something I always organize myself. And so founders reached out. So for example, we did dinners for a number of founders. Some of the stories, the entire product map would change in some cases. Some people literally would close like 3 or 4 customers within the dinner. That was,
my God.
That was valuable for a number of founders.
Amazing.
A number of VCs, they would be able to do referencing on a couple of deal or a couple of spaces they'd be able to do, etc. And I just found this out much later on. I mean, look, I was just a CIO organizing dinner with my friends, basically.
Yeah.
We became friends. And then they extended to other people. So now I was doing a dinner in San Francisco, I was doing one in the East Bay, then I was doing one in Palo Alto, and then Pure Storage heard about it, and Pure Storage were like, we want to build your entire CIO go-to-market function called Catalyst. So I got 2 full-time people I was working with, and I was doing dinners on the side of like Formula One events or our user conference, Accelerate. And then as a result of that, you just build a large community on the back of it. And so I just got to know a number of CIOs. A lot of them I either advised, coached, mentored, sometimes was a kind shoulder for them to cry on, I was like, don't mind the CMO, that's what they sometimes, it just happens, don't worry about what the CFO said. And I think community building is something that's very important, and I think you can do that in Silicon Valley, you can do it in other places, and I love doing that for my CIO friends, so yeah.
Wonderful. So Yousef, you've been very clear about your advice to founders. I've listened to some of your conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just build a product that will get wiped out by an OpenAI update or an update from a bigger company like Microsoft or Anthropic. What do you mean by that? And you yourself are building a startup with a very strong moat.
Sure.
You just announced your startup and you're already have you raised funding or you're
yes, I just closed the round, so we're super happy about that.
Amazing. So it looks like it's a great idea coming from your.
I hope so. The ideas are great, but execution is what it's all about, basically. And so we've got to basically make that happen. Yeah.
Definitely.
Go ahead.
So what is your advice to founders about the moat they're building?
Yeah.
Because I work with a lot of startups. Many of them, they don't want to build their own foundation models. There's a lot of stuff which is outsourced from these bigger companies.
Yeah.
You never know, they might just make up their mind and build something you're building.
Well, look.
So how do you know that? How do you know the difference?
So here's key thing. I think first and foremost is the big foundational model companies, OpenAI and Anthropic and Mistral. These companies, they've got a distribution advantage that startups do not.
Yeah,
right?
Definitely.
And so that definitively gives them an edge. That's one piece. The other piece is what the underlying technology of what they're building, not just because of the distribution advantage, but the pace, the velocity, and the type of changes that they are doing. I mean, it is breathtaking to see. So I agree with a lot of people who say, don't compete against those. Right?
Yeah, like a juggernaut.
I just think they're juggernauts, and I think unless you have a new insight and talent that basically, now people who've left those companies of course set up their own companies, so that will be interesting to see how that plays out. I think it comes down to some core things, right? For me, one of the key things that Moveworks did really well, it asked the question, what does success look like for the customer? It asked the question, are you solving a core problem? And so, I'm founder and CEO of Clario. So I've started this company. We've just raised our seed round, and we're focusing on a very core problem that comes from my own frustration. Sometimes the best companies are built on the back of frustration. If I take Eric Yuan from Zoom, phenomenal founder and CEO, worked in engineering at WebEx when it was sold to Cisco, understood that technology needed to be completely rewritten and re-architected for a video distributed first type company. It didn't happen. It wasn't going to happen at WebEx. He wanted to basically build it. And so he came from that frustration, right? So I think that the founders need to focus number one on being able to identify the problem at levels of depth. Like, it's not just discovery. So Kesar Yunus, for example, who is the founder and CEO of Applied Intuition, I interviewed him, last year, and he said, he had 180 pages of notes. He had spoken to every founder, VC, around them. So I think doing a lot of groundwork is super important, and some people do a shortcut on that. I think the second is being able to identify what a successful outcome for a customer looks like.
So give me an example.
Right. So for example, in our case, we want to be able to clean and organize and manage unstructured data in enterprises.
It's a big problem.
Files and
Yeah.
documents and images and videos. And we want to improve AI data quality. We want to be able to reduce infrastructure costs.
Yeah.
We want to reduce legal and compliance risk. And we want to be able to provide a better experience for employees of companies so they don't have to search through garbage. Okay?
Why won't the big companies do this?
I wish they would. I welcome it. I welcome competition, right? The problem is it may not be a core focus for them. So similarly, for example, if you think about companies that wanted to solve, it's an innovator's dilemma, right? So for example, I invested in an identity company called Serbi, which does identity management. Okta Ventures invested in that company. Some people would say, well, why wouldn't Okta solve it? Okta have their own priorities and set. So, I wish they would solve it. I came on the back of trying to solve a problem that I think hasn't been solved effectively or done in a way that my CIO friends and I as a CIO would not be convinced by. So I'm basically building a product with my team that I would buy, and that has worked for me relatively well in the past, but I'm a first-time founder, having raised capital, and I'm going to be selling into an audience that I know. So the other advice I would give is, you got to know the customer. Like qualification, understanding what a good customer fit looks like, this is absolutely critical. People waste a lot of time being able to be in long sales cycles with customers that will probably not buy, who are probably not a good fit, who will not make successful. So I think in the early stages, the biggest advice I would give to founders is ask yourself, how do I make customers really successful? And be able to build along those lines. To answer your question, the big companies, they may do it, but I don't think it's going to be a core focus. And this used to happen with a lot of the cloud providers, right? So you go up to AWS reInvent or Microsoft Ignite or Google Next, and you'd be exhibiting in the booth, right, in the expo hall, paying $150,000 for a booth. And then, Andy Jassy at the time would show up and do his 3-hour keynote. And he'd say, we've been talking to a customer, we've been working really hard, and we're announcing this new service. And the poor startup was basically made $150,000 exhibiting it and on this expo stage. It just found its biggest competitor being on the platform that they are basically building on top of. But they survived, right? They survived.
Yeah.
So I think if you operate in big markets, there's plenty of room to play. I think competition is a good thing because it validates stuff. And honestly speaking, the good news is it's an imperfect industry by its very nature. We're supposed to innovate, improve, and accelerate and do that. And the thing is, it's a very exciting time to build a company with AI. So that's
absolutely. I would be stumped by the pace of change.
Yes.
But then
a lot of people are. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Especially, we wanted to build some features. Me and my team members, we were always worried that ChatGPT would do it or Claude would do it before us. So we just held back.
Yeah.
And they were well on their way. Firefly's AI almost announced it. So these are all my peer circle. They were working on it. So I said, I won't do this. I want to make sure the big guys are not on it. But
I think the point I'm making is it's still a big market.
Still a big market.
So yes, ChatGPT and OpenAI have a transcription product, have a call recording product, right? But guess what? People use Fathom, and they really like that. People love Granola. I think that's a phenomenal product, right? Yeah. People still use Fireflies, right? So what Sam's done there, I've met Sam and the founders of Firefly. That's been great. So everybody, it's a big market, right? And the best part of it, it's very democratic. And the way that customers vote is with purchase orders and with their credit cards. Yeah. It's totally fair game.
Wonderful. But what about this news, this report from Harvard Business Review that 95% of the generative AI pilots are failing inside companies. Yeah. So enterprises are very wary of adopting these solutions. Let's say, your solution is very deeply integrated into the company or at our layers.
One of the big reasons for, if you look at that report, the MIT report, and a number of others, part of my motivation was to be able to understand why 3 years after the launch of ChatGPT, these AI projects are failing in enterprises. Yeah. And when I started doing the digging, there are a number of foundational issues, and one of them is data, which is what I'm trying to solve for.
Exactly. Yeah. And the context issue, and also the issue of people not going fully agentic. They're afraid. Yeah. In the enterprises, they don't want to go wrong. Yeah. So looks like your company is aligning for better AI adoption.
So our focus is to improve the quality of data that you are going to be putting in AI projects, because after 3 years of ChatGPT, there's garbage in, garbage out, right? So now there are a lot of companies that are trying to solve for this in structured data perform, right? Like phenomenal. Then they should continue to do that. And there are also companies looking to do that in unstructured data. We just think that this is a very, very big industry. And the reason for that is because the volume of data that's being created in enterprises right now is accelerating at a pace we haven't seen. And the reason for that is if you wanted to create a document, pre-ChatGPT, you'd have to start up Google Doc or Microsoft Word, and then you'd have to type in, and then maybe you do voice transcription, etc. Now, you go into OpenAI or you go into Claude, ChatGPT or Claude, and you basically in a prompt say, create a 50-page document about Ridge Ventures and Yousuf Khan and his terrible dress sense and put in a video about it and his ridiculous accent and his background and make it sound really poetic. And within 5 minutes, it will create this document. Okay? Now, if you think about that in the enterprise, that document or that file now sits in the enterprise, and then it gets shared, and then it gets changed into different versions, and then one of those people leaves, and then 5 years later, all of that stuff is still there. And by the way, whilst that's happening, you're basically putting that into an AI project in some way, shape, or form. The same applies to Confluence, for example. So if you look at internal knowledge bases, they've got old crap sitting there. Why is that happening? So the way I look at it, I just want to be the Marie Kondo of enterprise data. I want to be able to sort of clean it up and to be able to provide that using AI. I think other people should be doing it. I think part of the reason that these AI projects fail is data quality. I think part of the reason is change management. I think part of the reason it fails is because of infrastructure. I think part of the reason is cost. And I think a big part of the reason is because there is literally fear about it going completely haywire. So for example, if you roll out an AI project for customer service and that supposed AI model hallucinates and be able to give discounts and give free tickets like it did for Air Canada or whatever, like that's going to affect, and it's just bad press. So I think there's multiple reasons going on there. I think you've got to start at the foundation, and that's what we're looking to focus on.
Wonderful. So if you look at an organization that uses data, there are various lenses in which you can look at the data. The identity lens, let's say the legal and compliance lens, the observability lens. These are all expensive lenses. So how do you prepare for that world with your startup?
So the way we think about that is we focus on what we consider to be very easy for us to be able to manage and contain, right? And for that, for example, is let's start with basics. Former employees, right? So this year and in 2025, we had tons of companies that had layoffs. We had that, but we've had that in several other years. That data, believe it or not, is still hanging around, taking up storage, being fed into AI models, being looked at for...
It's not relevant.
I mean, it's not relevant anymore, right? And so I'm just, maybe it's my OCD, maybe it's like I just want to have a clean workspace. I'm like, what's going on here, right? Now, so data retention, we did this survey, we did this review. Only 27% of companies that Deloitte basically surveyed actually practice data retention in action. Right? That basically means most of it is just on paper and being told. If you think about it, just go in your phone, and I guarantee it to you, you're still paying more for storage for Apple or Google because you haven't cleaned up your photos.
Right?
Right? And you haven't done it, right? Now, I discovered this problem early on, and I'm like so annoyed. I was so freaking hard to basically solve for. And so I thought, wait a second, now if I look at some of the problems that are happening. So my unfair advantage as a founder is that, yes, I was a former CIO, so I know a lot of CIOs. So I called up a lot of CIOs and I was like, tell me how you solved this. And they're like, oh yeah, this has not been solved at all. So I think sometimes you just go after the most boring of problems. Sometimes you go after the most foundational of problems. And if you can solve them the right approach, you may be able to create a great company on the back of it. And that's my goal, basically.
Wonderful, amazing. So Yousef, you have so much insight. I think you've seen so many technology waves. What is your advice to the founder of 2025-26, an active founder in this day and age? What is your advice?
Don't do it. It's awful. Just turn back. Just don't do it. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Okay, good advice.
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. My first advice is focus on the problem at a level of depth. Number two is be able to do your homework, like do more discovery. And part of that is twofold, not just because you want to do enough discovery so you can have some notes you can put into product. If you are building a B2B startup, even if you're building a B2C, understand the customer experience. Like part of the hustle for getting funded requires you to be able to demonstrate that you can speak to customers, that you can sell, and you can be able to demonstrate that. And I think that's important.
For some reason, these models are repetitive. Like this comes in handy as a CIO selling the product inside the company.
Yeah.
You've done this internally, you're doing it out externally. So this is just a model which is good to have for anybody.
Well, I think that is, but you've got to be able to demonstrate that when I look at it from the lens of an investor, right? When I was investing, when you're looking to invest in companies, you ask the question, can this founder build a product? Yes. Can they sell? I don't know. What data have they presented that allows me to say, have they spoken to 50 prospective customers or potential customers of existing legacy solutions to solve it? So those things are kind of required. I think the third thing is you've got to think you've got to be understanding that you have to understand your market really well. I think the best founders, in my viewpoint, are the ones who pitched to me that we invested, really are able to navigate and understand and talk about the market in a way that is just really impressive. That would be say, look, these 5 companies, they were successful for this reason. Well, this company, this is doing super well. Their approach is this. And some of the best founders are able to basically do that. That's something I learned, and I said, I've got to learn how to do that and understand it. So when I looked to basically build the solution, now, I came from an experiential standpoint. I was being a CIO. I was like, how would I have solved this when I was CIO? I couldn't solve it. I couldn't find a solution then, right? I looked in the market, tried to do the same now. Very difficult for me to find one. That's why I saw the opportunity. And the last piece of advice is be thoughtful about how you raise capital and how you go about doing that. I think I put out a blog post about a year and a bit ago, which still people refer to back, is, if you're a first-time founder, do the homework of the pitch, of the presentation, preparation to be able to raise capital.
Where do they go wrong?
Where do they go wrong?
You've listened to so many pitches at Ridge.
Yeah, hundreds of them every single year. I love talking to founders.
Why do they lose you? Why does one lose?
Well, so for example, they can't ask. Sometimes they don't have a plan. It's astounding.
Okay.
It's like
they come to you for cash. They don't have a plan.
They don't have a plan,
Okay.
right? And the plan is, and I'm not trying to be derogatory about it. It's like the plan to build a company which will be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, I'm not saying you have to have all the answers, but surely you need to be able to say what this looks like, where you kind of go and how you execute. For example, we had a number of situations where I met a founder who was successful in their last company, had a successful exited their last company got to a couple of million revenue and they got acquired and they had made some money and now they're starting their next company. And so then sometimes you'd be like, okay, so raise capital, build a product, etc., etc. Well credentialed, well set up, well referenced. And then you basically ask the question, you're going after this market, what would your go-to-market team look like? What would you need in a profile? Couldn't answer the question. And I was like, wait a second. But the reason for that is because in the last company, they hadn't had enough experience in building out go-to-market, and so that's part of the plan. Right? So that's important to be able to have a plan and to be able to demonstrate that. Second, be able to understand it's a market. And number 3, understand that this is a long-term journey. So the team that you're able to put together, understand that you're going to be able to make mistakes, but be able to talk about the team that you're able to, and why you are the person to lead that team. Right? Those are key things that I would say.
And of course, the moat. The build a strong moat. Don't build a rapport.
I think I will slightly disagree with you on that. I think that moats are actually very difficult to build. I actually think in this day and age, it's so, because the ability to create a product now is really, in the past, I think with cloud, you could create a product. Now you can create products and you can do it at scale. So I think that's one piece. I actually think that the right architecture is what's going to win the day. I think the right user experience is going to win the day. I think the reason for that is I think AI products are very unforgiving. If you think about it, right? Like when Uber came along and you were using Uber, right? And you'd basically, you'd be in the middle of nowhere and you order a ride, right?
Yeah.
And you'd be like, this is great. Now, a month later, you'd be in the middle of nowhere, you'd order a ride, and it'd say it's going to be there in 7 minutes. And friend to friend, you'd say, why is it taking 7 minutes? You wouldn't appreciate the fact that it's basically in the middle of nowhere, someone's going to pick you up and going to take you home. With AI, it's a very unforgiving. This is why AI projects fail. It's because what happens is you start, using an AI tool, whether it's a chatbot, it starts to hallucinate, and you're like, I don't trust this thing. I'm never going to use it again. That's why you have fatigue. That's why you have people. And so in our case, when we were looking to build a company, the reason that sometimes these internal solutions in AI projects fail is because they're referencing old garbage data. And we're like, we need to get rid of this stuff because that. So you know what I mean? And so
that's a strong move.
Right. And so that's ultimately what I'm. So I think user experience and architecture is actually going to be a more critical piece. I think the moat happens over time. I think the best moat are customers.
Yeah.
I really do believe that. I think customers who love your product, that's going to be your moat. No question in my mind.
Amazing. So a little bit about you as a
Sure.
person.
Sure.
What does Yousuf Khan do when he's not working?
When I'm not working, what do I do? Very interesting. I read a lot.
What do you do? Is it the work related? Or
No. So I read nonfiction. So I'm a history lover. I love history. So I love being able to. Part of it is just understanding people's stories, their background, industries, and that sort of stuff. So I read a lot, basically. I do love being able to go for a long walk. I think that's it does clear your head in a big way. I think that's super important. And I do believe that actually I've now started to focus much more on being able to cook more as well as be able to do more physical activity. Because honestly, when you're a founder or you get at this pace, and part of it is just getting old, that's part of the job actually.
Yeah.
So being able to configure your life along those lines. So nothing extravagant in any way, shape, or form. Relatively simple from that standpoint. So yeah.
And who would you have dinner with? A dream date?
A dream date. Okay.
Dinner date. Let's call it a dinner date.
Let's call it dinner.
You've had the best of the CIOs for dinner, so I won't ask you that.
It's a very, very good question. You're very good at this. Okay, so let's think. Actually, you know what? I probably would like to have dinner with Sam Altman.
Oh,
I would.
wow.
I would just like to I'd be like, is this real? Like, what's going on? You know what I mean? Just like, because he's a bit of a character in himself,
Yeah.
and so I think being able to have like just 30 minutes of just focus time.
Feel the vibes.
Focus time is that. The other person I'd like to have dinner with is Pope Leo. I actually think that because he's like taken over. It's been a big year, right? He's like sort of coming into place, and I'm like, hey, how are you now? You're now leading this organization. Like, how are you doing? Are you doing okay?
Wonderful.
Like, what's going on? So two very, very different parts, but areas of interest and personalities I think are interesting. Yeah.
Wonderful. One favorite book.
One favorite book.
And then I will ask you a recommendation for the listeners as well.
Okay.
A book recommendation.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of history, but I'm a big fan of both world history, political history, and then also industrial history. So I follow industrial history very closely. And the automotive industry is something that's been super interesting to me. I've been fascinated with all these companies. And it's gone up and down, right?
Yeah.
With electric vehicles and the financial crisis and stuff.
It's shaped human thinking.
Yeah.
The civilization.
Yeah.
It's a fundamental force.
Yeah, totally. So there's a great book called Once Upon a Car.
I love it.
That really talks about talks about the financial crisis, and the reason that was interesting is because being able to study a company and its history and the leadership around
It's
it.
about Uber and
No, it's about the car companies out of Michigan, Ford and Chrysler, etc. And how they were kind of working together. No, Tesla was not at the time, but the traditional companies. I think it was very, very interesting to be able to basically see that.
I think that was a more fundamental shift than what we're seeing.
Yeah.
It's just there are not enough people to create a buzz about it back then.
Yeah, totally. Any book by Walter Isaacson, I would highly recommend. I think he did a phenomenal job on the Steve Jobs book.
Yeah.
I still read that. I think that was very, very
I'm
good.
with you on that.
I think he did a very good job on Innovators. I think he did a very good job on Elon Musk.
The book is great.
I think he is definitely one of the best storytellers out there.
Yeah.
So I think any book by Walter Isaacson I would highly recommend. No question.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Totally.
So Yousef, thank you so much for
Thank you.
this amazing hour.
No, thank you.
This is like a dream. I'm still probably in the dream.
I appreciate that. You're very, very kind. You're very, very kind. Thank you.
But
Thank you.
love to have you back again and
Fantastic.
learn more about Get Clarity on what you're up to.
I appreciate that. Good luck. And by the way, it's as part of this industry, platforms and conversations like this are super important. The fact that you're driving that is huge. I think you've had really, really amazing set of guests who've been here,
like
and
yourself.
founders. I know I was the 17th person you called, on the Sunday afternoon. You're like, I'm desperate. I really need to get this one done. I totally get that. It's totally fine. I don't take it personally. But I thank you for giving founders a lot of voice, and I think that's super important, and it's a big part of foundation for this industry. So I appreciate your efforts.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.